welcome to everyone. We are truly honored tonight to have with us Vice Admiral Richard Carmona, the 17th Surgeon General of the United States. Dr. Carmona needs no introduction, but for those of you who may not have heard it, his biography is a story of strength, courage, and dedication, a story that is as remarkable as it is inspiring. Overcoming personal hardships in his youth, Dr. Carmona served in the U.S. Army and is a combat-decorated Special Forces veteran of Vietnam. And he is a graduate of the University of California, San Francisco, where he earned his bachelor's and medical degrees. He is trained and practiced as a general and vascular surgeon with a subspecialty in trauma, burns, and critical care. He has distinguished himself as a hospital administrator, professor of medicine, and he has been a SWAT team leader with the Pima County Sheriff's Department and has over 30 years experience in law enforcement. As Surgeon General, Dr. Carmona focused on prevention, preparedness, health disparities, health literacy, and global health, including health diplomacy. He also issued many landmark Surgeon General's communications during his tenure, including the definitive Surgeon General's report about the dangers of secondhand smoke. After completing his statutory 4-year term as Surgeon General, Dr. Carmona was named Vice Chairman of Canyon Ranch, where he serves as CEO of the company's health division, President of the Canyon Ranch Institute, and Chief of Health Innovations. There's a lot more to say about Dr. Carmona, but I'm sure you would all rather hear from him than from me. Admiral, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Steve. And it's really me who should be giving the thanks to the family. There's not a day goes by that I don't miss each and every one of you. I joined the Corps and I knew it existed, but I didn't know much about it because I came up through the Army. And I left with a new family, one that I am perpetually dedicated to because of the extraordinary work I see them do still every day and have done, and the history that they have. So, Captain, fellow U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps officers, civilians who may be on, thank you for the privilege and the opportunity to speak to you today about our Corps, which, let's not forget, one of the 7 uniformed services of the United States of America. And in my estimation, possibly the best. And I say this as a U.S. Army Special Forces combat veteran, former Vice Chairman of the Department of Defense Health Policy Board, with the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Meyer, and the member of many DoD leadership committees. I say this because without health, nothing else matters. Doesn't make a difference what service you're in or what you're doing. And we, the U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps, are the only uniformed service of health warriors in the world. We serve in the most visible and highly placed positions throughout all U.S. government agencies, but we also regularly serve in the most remote, desolate, and isolated assignments, from the Indian Health Service to the State Department, USAID, and many other extreme hardship assignments. We have deployed and or supported every U.S. war effort from the Civil War on, to include Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq, Africa to oversee the Ebola epidemics. And let me stop there for just a second to tell you how proud I am of my officers, because as Surgeon General, I was contacted by the White House in the war and said, we need a pharmacist to go to Iraq and start the first pharmacy in the combat zone. And I said, okay, how can I help? They said, well, we'd like you to find somebody for us. So I reached out to Admiral Morizugo and Admiral Williams and Admiral Babb, and I always call them the 3 Musketeers, and or together we call ourselves the 4 Amigos. Because I'll more on them later in extraordinary leadership. So I put out a note to the Corps and said, I would like to have any officers interested in deploying to Iraq who are pharmacists, please get back to me. I was overwhelmed by volunteers and I didn't know what to do. So we started a process and I interviewed many pharmacists who were eminently qualified. And then this one young lady came in to see me. And she said to me, I know you're going to think that maybe I shouldn't be in combat. And quite frankly, she was a young lady of my daughter's age. And I was thinking, could I send her to the combat zone? Quite honestly. And she sat there and eye to eye with me on the couch up at Park Lawn and told me why it was important that she go and represent the Corps, represent women. And I remember calling in Admiral Moritsugu and Admiral Williams, Ken, my deputy, and Bob Williams, my chief of staff, and said, I got to tell you, I'm biased. I mean, because I feel like I'd be sending my daughter to combat. And I went ahead and I said to then commander, lieutenant commander at the time, I think, Alicia Mozaccio. I said, okay, young lady, commander, you go. She went. She set up the first pharmacy in Iraq in the combat zone. When she rotated back stateside, I got a letter from the commanding general who said, this was one of the finest officers I've ever worked with. She got awards. She got recognized. And to this day, it still moves me because her dedication to duty and her performance reflected on all of us in this uniform. And as you know, she retired as a captain. She's in Thailand now doing great things. But again, I name her because she represented the best in all of us. And with the family at home, and I got to meet her parents, got to shed a tear with them, award her for her service. And again, she represented all of us. And then there was the Ebola epidemic. And Rear Admiral Giberson, as the officer in charge, the commander of that, another pharmacist. You know, I used to tell John Babb, it seems that pharmacists are running the world because no matter where I turned, there was always a pharmacist who was out in front as leadership, not necessarily as a pharmacist. But what broke my heart was our officers set up that field hospital and were in harm's way every single day. And not taking anything from the Army or the Air Force, but that's who got all the credit. While our officers were in harm's way every single day doing boots on the ground care. Later, they did get recognized at the White House, and I was very grateful of that. But again, another extraordinary job. Many of our officers are in harm's way every day, even in peacetime assignments, and of course, in war. We serve selflessly and often anonymously to make our nation and the world healthier, safer, and more secure. We are quiet professionals, but sometimes too quiet. Almost invisible publicly through hundreds of large, small, and individual deployments that occur annually. If we did not have a U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps, the government would have to invent one. And let me tell you another interesting story. As Surgeon General, I spent a lot of time on the Hill. I got to go all over the world and represent us. PAHO, World Health Organization, Congress on a regular basis, individual senators and committees giving them information from the Public Health Service. You allowing me to be your representative, to speak for you and all of our capabilities. And one day I met with a dear friend who was a very senior senator. And he called me in and we spoke for about an hour up at his office on the Hill. And this is a guy I knew before I was Surgeon General. Also a physician, by the way. And he said to me, Richard, you know what we need? We need a global health service. There's so much going on in the world. We need a deployable asset that we can send any place in the world to help our allies to do a lot of things. I said, Senator, we already have that. He said, what? What do you mean? I said, it's called the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps. We are all over the world already. And at the time, I was in negotiations with State Department to place our officers as physicians and health professionals in each embassy when I found out that our embassies were hiring local doctors on contract. So why don't we have public health officers there? And when I got to the Hill as Surgeon General, there were very few officers any place in any other government agencies. When I left, we had 250 officers at DOD, and we were running TRICARE. We had officers in every single branch of the federal government. Every single secretary had our officers. And often when they came to know our officers, and I never got a negative response. It was always, oh my God, do you have more of these people? They're terrific. And they'd want more. Agriculture, when we were dealing with all the terrorism and bio issues, and they needed food security and things. They wanted more veterinarians. They wanted more physicians. They wanted more nurses. And so once I recognized that my greatest success was exposing all of you to everybody on the Hill to see your capabilities. And then all I had to do was stand back, because I couldn't give them enough officers. And often I would be at odds with the politicians in charge, because they said, well, why are we doing this? I said, because this is our government, and our government needs the help. When the Vice President of the United States and the President needed bioterrorism expertise, it was our public health officers that went there, that we sent to the White House to be able to give them the insight they needed to make the best decisions. I'm very proud of that. Because as I said, I recognized that once I got to know the Corps and its capabilities, which were limitless, that my job was really to find places for all of these folks, because they are the best in the world. And I always got accolades, and they always wanted more. And yet there were only 6,000 of us, and we could only go so far. So I still smile when I think of all of those experiences I had, and all of the secretaries, Interior, Defense, Agriculture, Labor even, where we had public health officers providing useful information that generated policy for the health, safety, and security of our nation. And nobody ever did that before. It was like episodic. And I remember when I left, I thought, my gosh, I hope this continues, because the Corps should be triple in size so that we can meet all of the unmet needs of the United States government, but also the underserved populations, those at the margins that we do so much for, that we never forget about in the public health service. One of the things that we did in concert with my colleague, Julie Gerberding, who was the CDC director at the time, and Julie was my intern at UCSF when I was a senior resident. We go back, way, way back, good friends. And we started setting up a program as we were, many of you may remember, let me backtrack for a second. Most recently, there was a lot of talk about the new reserve program with the Corps, which I think is fantastic. But I want to remind everybody that about a dozen years ago, we had that program and got the legislative approval. It just wasn't funded. And the idea then was we were going to take our officers and put them throughout the country in public health departments and offer commissions to health directors around the country, so we'd have surge capacity in every community. That was part of the plan back then. But of course, it got caught up in politics and didn't fully come to fruition. But again, putting our public health officers every place. As public health officers, we have weathered more than our fair share of challenges. We have survived and thrived through many administrations where some elected leaders did not even know who the public health service was or what we did. Very sad. I can't tell you how many times speaking to elected leaders on the Hill, and I'd mention Commission Corps, and they go, well, what's that? I said, well, it's one of the 7 uniformed services. Really? And when you ask most of the elected officials who have not been in uniformed service, name 7 uniformed services. Often they don't know. They can name Army, Navy, and Air Force and Marines, but they don't know about NOAA and they don't know about public health service. Yet we are just as important, in fact, maybe more important at times, to the health, safety, and security of this nation. Some comments on leadership. Administrations come and go, but you all are part of the enduring backbone of our nation. You are all leaders, no matter your rank or title, for when called on and deployed, the global public looks to you to save them, to make their lives better, to make decisions that change an environment. Leaders are responsible for the destiny of others. And I always approach this with all of you who I had the privilege to work with, because you gave me the most exceptional privilege of my life to be your leader. And you always remember, as a leader, you are responsible for the destiny of others. These are the precepts that you learn in the War College. When you're a senior officer and you want to become an admiral or a general, you go through courses that last a year to teach you these important points and how to expand scope and scale to be able to do that. But all of my colleagues are admirals and generals in the other services who I know and work with very closely when I was Surgeon General. All of them understand what I'm going to say to you here. And it's extremely important, because each and every one of you, no matter your title, no matter your job, are leaders. Because you recognize first and foremost that the things you do, the things you say, ultimately are part of being responsible for the destiny of others. As a young Special Forces soldier in combat with a few soldiers, my decisions in combat sometimes determined if somebody lives or dies. Training, all of those things. But when I scale up to be Surgeon General and I have 6,000 troops in an agency that has 70 or 80,000 employees, and I'm interfacing with the other Surgeon Generals of the military all the time. I met with them every week. I was down the Pentagon with them. We had a seamless system with the Department of Defense, which is why we ended up with 250 officers there, which is why we ran TRICARE, which is why the Secretary of Defense and the DepSec said to me, I need more of your people. I didn't have more to give them. Once I put them out there in front and they saw the greatness of our Corps, they want more. But really the only difference from me as a young soldier to me years later as a Surgeon General and everything between was really the scope and the scale of the responsibility you have. You know, divisions, battalions, the Corps, but the same elements of leadership are important. Leaders are team builders. When I became Surgeon General, I'm going to be very honest with you. I came up through the Army and I understood chain of command and I knew my place. And I didn't know much about the Public Health Service when I was contacted and say, would you be willing to come back on active duty to be a Surgeon General? I said, yeah. I read, I started studying. But when I got into office, I want to be perfectly honest with you, and I was surrounded by some of the best leaders I had ever worked with in peace or in combat. Rear Admiral Ken Moritsugu, Rear Admiral Bob Williams, Rear Admiral John Babb. And I recognized, and you know, maybe this is politically incorrect, but I'm going to tell you, I said, why aren't they Surgeon General? I said, I am happy to be here. I'm privileged. And as I got to know Ken more, Ken and I had many conversations and a number of speeches that I gave my first year. I said, I am a better Surgeon General because a selfless public servant who has been here for decades has taught me how to be a Surgeon General. Rear Admiral Ken Moritsugu, Rear Admiral Bob Williams. Ken basically subordinated his own interest when he could have and maybe should have been Surgeon General to make sure that I became the Surgeon General necessary to earn your trust and be able to lead the Corps. And to this day, when I talk to him, he'll tell you, he'll say, Rich, don't thank me anymore. I said, Ken, I couldn't have done the job without you. You really taught me about the Corps and the culture. I know how to lead. I've led in battle. I've led in the Army, but I didn't know the Corps. I didn't understand the culture. And Bob Williams, Saturday mornings up at Park Lawn, we would meet and plan for the week. Nobody knew we were up there. And I remember I'd do my homework and I'd sit down with him, and sometimes John Babb would be there because he was in charge of all the deployments. And I'd come in and I'd say, okay, guys, I got an idea. Here's what we're going to do. And I tell him, this is great and this, that. And Ken would say, Rich, it's not a bad idea, but the timing is bad. And he was always the consummate gentleman. And basically you learn about the Hill and when to pull the trigger on certain issues. You learn about the complexity of what we do in health, which is not always just about health, but juxtaposed with politics. And so they taught me how to function in that environment and really become a good Surgeon General. But I couldn't do it without leaders like them who were willing to serve selflessly, subordinate their own positions to make sure that their leader always had the information to represent the entire Corps well. And to this day, I thank all of them all the time, and others, but those were the four that were around me all the time. So you have to build a team. And mine were the four amigos, as I told you, those admirals. Leaders are mentors. Probably the first job of any leader is to make sure that there's a pipeline behind you, that if the proverbial bus takes you out, there is somebody to move into your position. Okay. There is a plan. There is somebody able to step in. And so understanding that part of my job was to be able to mentor people around and below me, to inspire younger officers, to hope that they could someday be Surgeon General. And how can they do that? And of course, sometimes they would say to me, I'm not sure I can do that anymore because it seems to me that the position is not the way it used to be. And it would break my heart because I saw so many young officers who had the potential after decades of education and training experience to be able to become the Surgeon General, to earn the right by merit to become the Surgeon General of the United States. But yet I mentored each and every one of them as if each of them could be the next Surgeon General, because it was important to the Corps that they had those leadership, they had that leadership ability. Leaders are stewards of the brand. Our U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps has a brand. And everything we do, everything we say, how we wear our uniforms, how we salute, how we integrate with other services, how we go on a base and feel comfortable and know what to do, exemplify who we are as one of the 7 unified services. When I was a young Special Forces sergeant and I finished my training after a year and a half, the colonel called us in at Fort Bragg. And he congratulated us on our successes after winning our Green Berets. And he said, so let me tell you how this goes from now on. He said, you all are now owners of my brand, the brand of Special Forces and Green Berets. You can go into Fayetteville at night and party with the other soldiers. Some of them get drunk. Some of them get arrested. Some of them embarrass their families and the service. If you ever do that, you will never be part of my team again. There's no need to come in and ask for any guidance or any forgiveness. Drop your rucksack off and you will be sent to a regular unit, because my unit is as good as it is because each and every one of our soldiers understands that they represent my brand in everything they do every day. Even if you are in civilian clothes and you are in town and you get caught doing something stupid, it's not going to be Rich Carmona, citizen did it. It's going to be Rich Carmona, Green Beret, was in Fayetteville doing this or did that and embarrassed the United States of America. I looked at my Corps the same way, but I never had to worry because I never saw anybody that wasn't at top of their game, that didn't do the best they could to wear their uniform, to stand proud, to understand how to integrate with other uniform services, to understand our place in the bigger America and what we deliver to the bigger America that is different than any other uniform service in the United States. That's what we are, the stewards of this brand. And the brand, as you will hear from me in a moment, is pretty old. Leaders are communicators. You know, at the War College, they often talk about leadership in 2 veins. You can have leadership that is groups that, or leaders that try and intimidate you, and you have others that inspire you. You can have people that scream and yell at you and belittle you because you made a mistake. Or you have the real leader who sees you made a mistake, but sees that you tried your best and you just didn't have enough information. And often when that happened, I would go to that young officer and put my arm around him if I saw something, say, don't feel so bad. I know you're struggling now, but let me tell you something I did at your age that was worse than what just happened. Learn from it, because I see you have potential to be better. I see you have potential to be a great officer. Those are teachable moments that every leader recognizes, but you have to understand, is this person derelict in their duty, or are they trying as hard as they can, but they're not there yet? That teachable moment can make a difference in somebody's whole career, and they'll never forget it years later because you took the time to give them some guidance. And for me, I wouldn't be where I am today or anything I've done if it weren't for a few people in my life kicking me in the butt and telling me I was going the wrong way. You know, I started out as a high school dropout at 17 years old in the Army, and I had no tangible skills. But people, besides my mother and grandmother, who always had faith in me, even though I failed, recognized that I had potential. Each and every one of you as public health service officers who are in command of something, you have the opportunity to build those new leaders, to reach out, to grasp those teachable moments and make new leaders out of those young men and women, and make sure they understand the importance of what they do. Lead by example. All leaders lead by example. In fact, we always joke that the troops eat first. I remember going out in the field one time for a big exercise, and I flew in with my aide, Commander Patricio Garcia. And there was a long line, and everybody at the chow, and there was mixed soldiers there, and it was a Boy Scout camp, and it was in Virginia. And so we were in a hurry to get to the next event. And I remember Patricio said, "Boss, come on, we'll go up in front. We got to eat." I said, "Patricio, sin number one, the troops always eat first. They're going to be here slugging it out, hungry, not sleeping. I'm going to get on a helicopter and I'm going to fly someplace. And if I say I'm hungry, somebody's going to bring me something to eat. So I'm not going to do that, Patricio." And I'll tell you another one that's a little funny on that one. One of you at the COA conventions where we had 1,000 officers. And you remember on category day, the Surgeon General runs from room to room. And you have like 2 or 3 minutes in each room. And you have to give a quick speech, thank everybody, and move on. And it's kind of a game to see who can do it best. So I did my 8 or 10, 12, then I got to 12, and I had not been to the head for several hours. And so we came out, and the convention center's packed. The line at the men's head looked like the women's. There was 30 or 40 people waiting to get in, people standing at parade rest, ready to go. So Patricio says, "Boss, go to the front of the line." I said, "Patricio, quite frankly, I will not do that." I can't tell you exactly what I said, but I said, "No, Patricio, we're going to have to wait." So some of the officers saw me there, and some of them were new officers. They had just completed the our then new basic training for officers. And so I walked, everybody says, "Sir, go ahead. We know you got to get into the next one." So I guiltily walked into the head. It was packed, a whole row of urinals with probably 20 urinals. And on this side, all of the commodes. I stepped in, and there's a brand new officer in starched whites, probably just finished his training. He sees me and he screams out, "Attention on deck," okay, in the head. And the most important command I ever gave in my life after that was, "As you were," to avert a tsunami of stuff coming at me, had everybody turned and faced me for the salute. But those are the moments you remember that are so fantastic and emblematic of teamwork and the caring and the compassion of our Corps, and how important it is. I remember when I got a call once from the White House, and we were talking down at the DOD, where the PT results, physical performance results, were marginal for all services. And I was told, "You need to do something." And people were telling, "You need to send a memo to the troops and tell them they need to exercise." But when you looked at our services, and you looked at our officers, and you looked at the op tempo, you looked at the intensity of the work they were doing with 2 wars going on, and you looked at the mental health problems, you looked at the challenges they were having. And I said, I don't think the right thing to do is to send a memo and order people to exercise. So I said to Patricio, "I have a strategic plan. It's going to take a while, and you're going to help me." I said, "Get me a list of where we're doing PT around the country, so when we travel, I want." He says, "Okay, boss, you want to go stop in?" I says, "Yeah, something like that. But when we travel, make sure you have your PT gear with you." And so the first one I remember was at Fort Meade in Maryland. And I showed up, and there was a large group of officers there. And, you know, like my car pulled up, and I had my PT gear on. And they, of course, the officer there saw me, and they called everybody to attention. I said, "As you were." And he said, "Sir, thank you for coming. The troops will be inspired because you're here." And I said, "Well, I'm happy to be here. Where's the starting line?" He said, "Sir, well, it's right there. We're about ready to start." I said, "Okay, thanks." He said, "Well, sir, you'll see better from over here." I said, No, I'm here to take my PT test." He said, "Sir, you don't have to take your PT test." I said, "Commander, why would I ask you to do something I don't do? I'm a deployable asset." So I went and did my PT test. Now, I'm not foolish. Most of you who know me, I was at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning at Navy most mornings, and I kept myself in shape. And most of these kids were half my age, or my children's age. So I went and did my PT test, and I maxed it. And I managed to, in a very diplomatic way, embarrass maybe 3/4 of the people taking the test. But I didn't say anything to them. I actually stood at the finish line and gave them all a high five and said, thanks for serving your country. Thank you for all you've done. And then they said the people that were on profile who couldn't run had to swim. So I said, oh, okay. So he said, sir, do you want to go watch them swim? I said, no, I'll swim with them. So I lived in the water, both as an ocean lifeguard, but in special forces at dive school, miles and miles of swimming. And I knew I would do real well. In fact, I finished first. But what I did there was I had Patricio get a big stack of towels. And every kid that got out of the pool, I gave him a towel and said, thanks for your service. You look pretty good swimming. Keep at it. Well, I repeated that around the country at different times and just would show up. And in 2 years, we had the highest PT performance ever. And I never ordered anybody. I never embarrassed anybody. I basically showed up and inspired them and said, this is the right thing to do for our country and for you when you're deployable. So again, examples of leadership that I learned in the Army, but took to the Corps and saw so many great examples of that in all of our officers every day. So we have a lot to be proud of. How will history look at us in 20 years or 50 years? Let's put it in perspective. 222 years ago, President Adams created what became the Marine Hospital Service and then the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps, the first federal health system in the new United States. You may not know, but we took care of the then Army and Navy. In fact, there was another service that we took care of. It was called the Marine Revenue Service. We call it today the U.S. Coast Guard, okay? We were the one and only health system for the federal government. In fact, you can argue we were the first HMO because sailors had to donate 10 cents of their pay, every paycheck, to be able to get health care. That's us. That is us. That's something to be proud of. We were number one. And when I think about this rich history, and often our officers don't know it. John Parascandola, our historian, I spent hours with him. When I became Surgeon General, I went down to the National Archives. I pulled every book I could. I was friends, Plague and Politics, and read them. And I said, I need to know more about this. And I learned the history. And I saw a lot of social injustice. I saw inequities. But I saw a Corps that was driving on in spite of the challenges that they were faced with. And they became better. About 150 years ago, our first Surgeon General, John Woodworth, a retired U.S. Army surgeon after the Civil War, was tapped to become our first Surgeon General and organized what was then a kind of disenfranchised group of the Marine Hospital Service. And you know why this happened? Because Congress started looking at the Marine hospitals around the country and looked and said, these hospitals are looking more like hotels that are being staffed by employees, because the states had argued, give us the money to run it and we will run these hospitals for you. And we had almost 36 hospitals around the country eventually, public health hospitals. But back in the 1860s and late 60s and early 70s, Congress started looking and saying, we're not running these effectively. So Congress said, we're going to take that money back from the states and we're going to create a position of a single doc who's going to oversee this whole uniform service. And here, that's where the first Surgeon General comes from. Before that, it was supervising surgeons. And so what was interesting was when John Woodworth came out, and for those of you who don't know, his gravesite is not far from where you are in Washington, D.C. And as Surgeon General, I visited it several times with Jerry and a few others from the COA, just to get a feel for what it was like to stand there in his shadow and what he had created 150 years ago. And interesting, he was told to organize this politicized, disorganized Marine Health Service in what he called an apolitical uniform service of health professionals who were physically fit and deployable to address the needs of our nation and our allies. That still holds today. 150 years ago, still holds today. He saw the big picture of what we were capable of doing. From then on, the Surgeon Generals were promoted from the ranks of career public health officers, and most of our divisions, optives, were run by public health officers. That's not the way it is anymore. The Army, the Navy, and the Air Force Surgeon Generals are promoted by merit. They work hard, and it's a pyramidal system. Over time, this has become more politicized, both for operating division chiefs as well as for the Surgeon General position. So again, this is not meant to be political, but just calling it out for what it is. The thing that hurts me more, and I know the captain feels the same way because I read her remarks, is that this position rightfully should be to a U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps officer who has earned the right to be considered just like the Army, Navy, and Air Force officers do, period. And, you know, we've had some great ones, and I've known all of them for many years, and we've even had a nurse as a Surgeon General. The Navy, Army started that, and I'm a registered nurse myself, so I was very happy to see that. It's about leadership. It doesn't, the doctor or nurse doesn't make a difference. It's about leadership is what we need. And I think that our officers who have worked selflessly for 20 or 30 years to get that second star and then a third star deserve the right to be considered, if not limited to those officers, just like the Army, Navy, and Air Force do. And I'm not saying anything new because most of you know me. I said this publicly when I was Surgeon General, even though it was politically incorrect, because it is the fair thing to do. It is the right thing to do. If politicians reached into the Army, Navy, or Air Force and said, by the way, we're going to give you somebody aligned with our party, there would be all hell breaking loose, okay? Because that's not what uniformed service is based on. Uniformed service is based on a meritocracy. You earn the right to serve and you earn the right to promote to those positions. And each and every one of you in uniform has earned the right to be there and promote, no matter what your rank is or what your title is. So back to the original question there of what the history will say. History will show a U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps whose roots began with the beginning of our nation and continue to evolve to meet the ever-changing needs of our nation, from routine prevention and public health to all hazards preparedness, to include pandemics, terrorism, and natural and man-made disasters. Historically, or historians, I should say, will say that we served with dignity and integrity. We made mistakes, but we served selflessly. We never asked for recognition except for those we serve who sometimes were in need of health equity and social justice. We are our nation's warriors, our health warriors. We are the nation's health warriors, the only ones in the world. And the United States and the world are better for our presence. Hooah! Thank you all very much. And I wish I could reach out and hug all of you because I miss you every single day. And never forget how important you are to the world. And like I tell you, I mean, this is the way I felt with my special forces teams. And then I met the Public Health Service. And now, years later, I have never let go because I feel it's my duty to do everything I can to shine a light on the great work you do and to still be part of your family because you let me be part of your family. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the board of directors and all of our members, we sincerely thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your unwavering dedication to the uniform that we wear, to the service of all of our officers, both current as well as retired. We really appreciate and admire your tenacity and your bravery and for representing us extremely well. Before you go and find a new football coach, we'd like to maybe ask one question and let you get on your way.
As many as you like. I know you have other things to do, but I'm yours for as long as you want me.
Very good. Thank you, sir. One question came up was, you spent a large portion of your time as the Surgeon General educating others about the Corps and its capacities and abilities. How would you recommend that we grow our Corps today?
Well, I'm happy that if the legislation continues and we grow reserve force, I think not only because it gives us surge capacity, but if we cleverly stand up the reserve force so that we have it distributed in every state and hopefully within every public health department, we have a member of our reserve public health service that we can call on because we can stay connected with them when they're in their regular job in public health departments year round. CDC can stay connected with them. And when we surge, They know what they have to do because they're weekend warriors like the Army or Navy or Air Force Reserve. You do your summer camp, you go to weekend retreats, you stay certified. So that's where I would see it growing. And I think to really meet the needs of the nation, as I said, to fill all the slots in government, to be able to represent our nation in our state departments so that they do not have to hire contract doctors in local countries, but put public health officers there to be our liaisons for health in those places. To liaison with other governments, to liaison with World Health Organization, with the Pan American Health Organization. There's so many opportunities for us to practice health diplomacy, not just care, but health diplomacy, to build those relationships we need to foster peace and prosperity around the world. And where necessary, go in harm's way and make it better for whoever is being challenged.
Very good. Excellent. Well, I don't know if you can see the chat or not, but it's literally blown up with many comments from those who are in attendance this evening, thanking you for your inspirational remarks, your time, and your leadership and wisdom. So we thank you so much again for joining us tonight and your willingness to quickly respond and be a part of this evening with us. Thank you, sir.
Again, it's a absolute privilege for me to be here with my public health family. And for all of you listening, I'm here all the time for you. Whatever I can do to leverage the COA, its reputation, to grow it, to make it better, I will always be there. So thank you for the privilege of being your leader. And, once a Surgeon General, always a Surgeon General. I salute all of you. Thank you.